Hello and welcome to Constellations interviews for our upcoming conference in October 5th to 8th in 2017 in Virginia Beach. And I am so excited today to interview Elmar Dornberger. Elmar's topic is Social Presencing Theater, bringing experiential awareness into organizations. Super excited about this, Elmar. Welcome.
Thank you so much, and I'm very happy to talk to you today, as always.
Yes, it's going to bring back memories of our great dinner when we had it in San Diego. Anyway, I'd like to start off by having you, perhaps, if you could, explain a little bit about organizational constellations and how they're different from typical constellations.
Thank you for this question. That's actually a question I'm very passionate about because I worked in organizations in the corporate world for about 20 years. So I was actually on the inside of very large organizations and saw the functioning and the dysfunctioning part all at once. And I also trained first in family constellation, as everybody else does it. Most people do it first. And then later actually realized that in order to really work with organizations, you need kind of a different lens. You need a different way of actually seeing how these dynamics unfold. And then I took an extensive training, actually the first training that was offered in Holland on organizational constellations. And actually just before we started talking, I made a little drawing, and I want to show you just this tiny little drawing. And first, can you see this?
Yes.
So this is kind of like a family constellation. So here on the bottom, this is the identified patient or like the client.
Right.
The child. And then the next level up would be like the parents, mom and dad, grandparents, great-grandparents, and so on. So we always start here with a family constellation. This is how we start. And from here, we go back into the system. Now, if you just turn this is actually what a traditional organization looks like. This is the boss, and then these are the different ranks. Now, when we work with organizations, so we don't always get hired from this place to do an organizational constellation. And still, several or many dysfunctions can actually happen right here and then are filtered throughout the organization. So very often we might actually be hired on a different rank and a different level. So when we enter the system, like not on the top, but we enter it here, we need to be totally aware of all the sort of the dynamics that are happening within that. So, for instance, and I'm going to take this away now, when you think about boundaries, boundaries in an organization are very clearly defined. What is appropriate, what is not appropriate in terms of dressing, in terms of how we interact. In a family, that's much more fluid. So these boundaries are not so clearly set. And to me, actually, when I talk about family and organizations, there are really kind of three layers. And one is the family, one is the family-owned business, and one is really corporations. And sort of, I think a lot of people, they think when they can do family constellation work sort of with family-owned businesses, which is a little bit easier to work with because we understand family dynamics. Pretty much all of us have grown up in a family, so we know those dynamics. So it's a little bit easier to understand how does a family-owned business possibly work. Mom and dad, the son, maybe the daughter-in-law is maybe part of it. But even there are complications because there's also levels of engagement that often we kind of forget. So when we do a family constellation, it's all sort of on one level because we're just going from the um, our client into the system, and we go sort of backwards into the system. When we work with a family-owned business, again, what level is the issue? Is it really on an organizational level, or is it on a family level? Is the issue actually between, dad and the daughter-in-law? And is that really then an organizational issue, or is that a personal issue? So there's so many really distinctions that we have to make and we have to understand. And then we actually also interact very differently. And it's not just that we go into the system and we go into the past and we're trying to reveal what are the patterns from the past that need to be healed. Especially like when we work in a corporate setting. Recently I had a conversation with a possible student of mine for upcoming training. And we're talking about organizational constellations. And she said to me, oh yeah, a friend of mine, he does constellations and he does organizational constellations. And I was present at one of those constellations. And then she proceeded to tell me that, yeah, in one of the scenarios, the boss was kneeling in front of the employee and he was sobbing. He was crying. And I just saw the look on your eyes, and mine was pretty much the same. I think my heart just kind of stopped for a moment. And then I was thinking about boundaries. I was thinking about honor and respect. I was thinking about the next morning at work. Can the boss still be the boss? Can the employee still be the employee? How helpful was this constellation versus how much trauma might this have caused right then and there?
Wow.
So we really need to understand hierarchies, in which level of the organization are we dealing with, what is safe, what is not safe, how can we preserve somebody's honor, even if something personal comes up. We need to know about maybe a parking lot, where when an issue is personal, we put that on a parking lot. We don't bring this up in public. So there are many dynamics that we really need to understand in order to do good work.
And we need to recognize some of the items that we're working with belong to the organization and not to the people involved.
Yes, that as well.
Yes, very interesting. And that's the distinction I notice people don't get.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. My gosh.
And the history of the organization is not the same as the history of a family system. Mm-hmm. It has some similarities. There are founders who created something, but those founders are often not around anymore, especially in a large organization. So you can't just go and blame people or blame history also very often in organizations, the work has to look not so much into the past, but into the future. Not what has caused this, but where do we want to go? Where do we want to end up? There's
so many more dynamics to look at.
Yes.
Not just balance, order, and belonging, because there's other orders within the organization that have to take place. Yes. Well, thank you for that explanation. That was very good. Very good. Super exciting. Okay. Well, I'd like to ask you now to tell us how social presencing theater is different in organizational constellations.
So I want to tell you just a little bit the background of social presencing theater.
Great.
So I've been studying Theory U, which came from MIT and Otto Scharmer, and I've been studying this for the last 3 years, and I've got a certification in facilitating Theory U, pretty much. And so at MIT, there's this woman named Awana Hayashi, and she was actually the founder of social presencing theater. And the background of social presencing theater comes actually kind of out of her culture. She's Japanese. She has been involved in performing arts, in dance, in meditation. And so her practice comes out of that. And Otto had asked her if she could come up with a form, an embodied form that could be brought into organizations. And so I've been studying this and using this modality. And the reason I'm presenting this is because I had actually asked Awana if she could come and present this at a conference. But due to scheduling problems, she can't. And I feel that this work is important and we should know about this. So I'm the second best, maybe probably the third best, or the fourth, I don't know. Somewhere along that line. But I feel really strongly that I really want to share this work so that people get another perspective, another way of how can we interact three-dimensionally in organizations. And, you know, the theme of the conference is, you know, bridging the divide, healing the personal and the collective soul. And I feel really strongly that when we work with organizations, organizations can be a really triggering place. You know, our contract is around a process or maybe a product that we work with, that we sell or that we perform in an organization. But there's so many other levels of value, of interest that we don't have contracts with. So we have so many diverse voices in an organization. And when they all come out, this can be very interesting.
To say the least.
Yes. So we need to have very, very safe processes. And when I came across this work, this has really been, I want to say, probably the safest process I've seen. So it comes from a very different point of view, but when you see it and you experience it and smell it and taste it and all that, it looks like a constellation. So it has a lot of similarities. Because it's three-dimensional, the difference is, you know, in a constellation, we really, we start with an issue and then hopefully, especially like in a family constellation, we want to get to a solution. It's sort of like the idea, you know, until something actually resolves and then everybody's happy and, you know. And doing that in an organization, that could take weeks. It could take months. So you can't really go with that same idea. Okay, I'm going to do a constellation now and, you know, in 2 hours we're going to be done and we have everything resolved. All the layers are going to be resolved. So, you know, that's already an illusion. Also, you know, the way we work with constellations, that we have people, you know, step into feelings. You know, how does that feel? That's not always safe in an organization, especially like when you're around peers. You know, it's safer when you're with a bunch of strangers and you can just express, oh, this is how I'm feeling right now. I'm hurt and I feel betrayed and all these issues might come up. But when you are amongst peers, you have to work with them the next day. And especially if there is some kind of a hierarchy, if somebody from another department is in there, from a higher level, is part of this group, how do you keep this safe? You know, if something comes out, what do you do with that? Do you have a bunch of parking lots that you put things? So the social presencing theater has really kind of a different dynamics. It's three-dimensional. You work with an issue, but it's actually more focused not in the past, it's focused into the future. What actually wants to happen? That's actually kind of the main question. So you're setting something up, you're setting up an issue with people, I've seen people with labels, depending, like, what the audience is, and so if there's a very big audience and they want to be able to track, sometimes people wear labels, and then it's really sort of a two-step process. So it's what is now, what wants to happen, and then you actually take a break, and then there is conversation, which we don't really do in Constellation. We don't really stop the process. And even if sometimes, Jane Peterson calls these constellations, I think she calls them the rocket constellations. It's like when the constellation just kind of takes off, and most of the audience or like even the participants are not even aware what's going on because the dynamics is just taken off. And even then, very often we don't stop. We don't stop the constellation and say, hey, where is everybody? What's going on? Things just keep going. And so in this process, it's much more of kind of a give and take. So we do a process, and when we go from the emotions, from the feeling, we go back to our heads. And we kind of process now. So what has happened? And I think very often, in constellation work, I think we push that emotional part, especially in organizations. I don't think we can actually really do that. We push it too far. So people going deeper and deeper into their emotional field. And then suddenly it's like, oh, I'm here now and I'm not even sure if this is a safe place for me anymore. Because I'm actually triggered and maybe my personal stuff is coming out. And I'm actually no longer really in this process. I'm now in my own personal process. So a lot of that is actually taken out by taking it much slower and much smaller steps and really pausing. But then there's also some other details, and you have to come to the workshop.
Of course.
I hope you're going to be there.
I'm sure your workshop's going to be full. Well, this is very exciting. Oh gosh. So how does your topic relate to the theme of the conference, Bridging the Divide, Healing the Personal and Collective Soul?
Yeah. So again, it's really this notion of creating safe environments. Because when we have opposite notions going on, we easily go to, so there's a conversation style where we're talking about, the first level of conversation is downloading. We just download information. The next level would be that we have a dialogue. So you and I, first the next level would actually be we have a debate. So from downloading, we go to a debate, and then we go to a dialogue. And so when we have opposite forces, how do we make this safe? How do we create an environment where we can actually move from a debate to a dialogue? And then the fourth level is actually where we would actually be co-creating. And we only co-create when it's totally safe. We're not co-creating if I feel like I have to guard myself, or I can't really speak my truth. Because if I really speak my truth, then my boss is not going to like me anymore, or my coworkers think I'm whatever, I'm different, I'm better, or whatever. So
we're rocking the boat.
Yes, exactly. So I think our job as constellators, especially in organization, is really to create safe spaces, and not necessarily really just to resolve the world's issues, but really how can we get from the downloading to actually maybe to a dialogue, and then maybe to a co-creation.
This is fascinating, Elmar. Wow.
Thank you.
This is very, very nice. I'm thinking along the same lines. We're going to continue the conversation off camera.
So, well, if you're going to be at the workshop, we'll dive a little bit deeper into this.
Yes, yes. Oh, well, your workshop sounds fantastic. I can't wait. I'm so excited. There's so many good workshops, as per usual, at our conferences.
Yes.
Well, yes. Anything else to add?
Again, for people who want to do organizational constellation work, and I think we need a lot of people. We need a lot of people. Mm-hmm. Because people in organizations suffer.
Yes.
We suffer all the time. And I still know a lot of people, including my wife, who used to work for a very large organization. And she recently quit because she couldn't take the suffering anymore. And as a friend of hers actually pointed out, you didn't belong to this tribe anymore. And she finally realized that this is no longer my tribe. Uh-huh. And I think a lot of people feel about that. They feel the same way. And I think they need help. And we can help, but we need to have the right tools.
Yes, definitely. I once read that something between 68 and 72% of people would leave their job if money wasn't an issue.
Yes.
So there is a lot of strife in organizations, and people can bear it for so long, but if there isn't that safe space, it's not fun going to work. Yeah. And if you don't have fun, you're not having energy.
Yeah. And I think you might have noticed too is that 10 years ago, people were not really that open anymore for anything, when the market crashed, people were not open for any kind of new agey kind of thing. And I think it is changing.
Yes.
I think we're actually at this turning point where people realize we need something different. And I think for us, for the Constellation community, this is an opportunity.
Yes.
But we have to know how to get in and how to do the right work, because in organizations, you get one chance. You get one chance, and if you do it right, you're going to be asked to come back again. Mm-hmm. If you create trauma, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the language is completely different in organizational constellations also.
Yes, correct.
That's something that people don't recognize necessarily at the beginning. Yeah. And using constellations as a coaching tool has to also have different language.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's also something I think we need to talk more about during the conference. Yes. Like what's the language and how are you talking about it? Or how can you easily learn that language? If you haven't worked in organizations, you don't really know what that language is. But you can learn it by just listening. And you can learn it in the moment by just listening.
Well, this has been super helpful. Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I'll just mention again, Elmar's workshop is Social Presencing Theater, bringing experiential awareness into organizations. I look forward to seeing you again at the conference, Elmar.
So do I.
Okay, have a great day, and I'll be talking to you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, take care.
Bye, Linda.
Bye-bye.